Hello there guys, my name's Matt and today I'm going to be showing you how to frame an angled stud wall between these two positions. This is a built-in wardrobe and I've got an existing stud wall here. I don't want to build a wall into the room because it takes away from the room, so I'm just going to put a door across the angle, this angle here. I've got a built-in wardrobe which I've levelled and screwed it into the ceiling where there's a stud in the ceiling and into the floor. Using these packers that you can get from Toolstation, they're called broad fix packers. They come in different sizes like 5mm, 1mm, 2mm, and so you can just pack them under each of the supporting legs of your wardrobe or whatever you're fixing it to, and then get the wardrobe level left and right so that what you're fixing to is nice, square and level. I know that this wall is level already because I did it myself, but yeah, just get a nice long spirit level and place it up against the edges and just check to see that it's level, and that's perfectly level, and then also in this direction, so that's perfectly level. So then you want to choose what size thickness of wall you're going to make. In my particular case, I've got a light switch here which is a restriction. I don't want to move this light switch onto the other side because now that it's installed there's not enough cable to move onto the other side, so I'm going to keep that light switch there, and I'm going to be fixing the wall onto the end stud here, because when you tap there it's hollow and on the end there's a stud, so that's going to be solid. And this is MDF, so measure that distance and then find out what sort of thicknesses you can put in there. I've got a 70mm by 45mm piece of stud wood because I want a nice strong wall. You can get smaller. I think Wickes do a 63mm stud wood by 38mm. That for me is a little bit too thin. I think that the wall could creak a little bit and move, and it might not be perfectly flat and straight depending on how straight the wood is. So basically what I'm going to be using is a 70mm stud, 18mm MDF on either side. MDF is nice and smooth, so you get a nice finish. You don't have to plaster it because it's such a small wall. I don't want to be plastering it. So that's my construction. I'm just going to offer it up against the wall to show you what it looks like when it's in the angled position, just to check that there's enough space for that light switch to be in. So I'll show you now. So you can see here, I'm just holding this section up against the wall here, and you can see there is a gap. It's approximately 6mm when I hold it straight away from the light switch. It's got the stud wall in there and it finishes flush with the edge of the wall here, so it comes down and finishes flush with the edge of the wall there. That's basically, I'm offering it up at a slight angle as it will be going into the wall, so just angling it towards where it will be finishing, and there's enough space to slot it in there, so that's all good. So then you want to choose a door lining that matches the thickness of wall that you're putting in. So here we've got a 106mm for the thickness of the wall, which is 18mm plus 70 plus 18mm. And then the actual door lining that I've chosen, I've already made it up here because it's very simple to put together, is 108mm in depth. And that will make sure that you've got a flush piece of surface for you to put the architrave around the door. So this door lining matches up perfectly with the wall here, and you can fix a door lining on nice and flush around. The actual door lining that I've chosen is one that you can get from Wickes. It's just a soft wood door lining. It is 762mm wide by 2010mm in length. And that basically gives you the exact door width that you need for a 762 door. Slightly over that, so that you've got enough play either side to fit the door in, and then you've got enough height there to fit any door below 2010 millimeters in length. And the door that I'm going to be choosing is 762 by 1981. So I'm going to basically be cutting this down to allow for a little gap either at the top and bottom for the door to swing in and out. I'm going to be cutting it down to 1990. Because that will give me 9mm to play with. So the door can be raised off the ground here by about 5mm, and then there'll be enough play at the top here, 4mm or so, to allow the door to swing open and close. So that's basically the door lining. It's very easy to put together. They've basically got these notches, so it will give you a choice of whether you want to do a 762 door or a 686. So you can either flip this wood either side and decide which size door you want to use. And then all I've done here is I've drilled pilot holes and screwed in with, I think the screws were about 70mm, so it goes all the way into that 70mm mark, just to get a nice solid framing. I've done that on both sides. and done it on the floor in this position here, because then you can make sure that the door lining is nice and flush when it's put together, and it will frame well. Now I'm going to show you how to actually get the angles for the stud when you're framing it around the door. So first of all, you want to make a frame that touches all of the outside parts of your wall, and then you start building in from that and put the door in at the end. So I'll just show you how to do that now. So I'm using this 18mm MDF wood, you can see here. But when you put the MDF at an angle up against the wall to where it's going to be finally sitting, it actually kinks out. You can see the gap there. So when you put a piece of wood at an angle, obviously that line is going to continue up against the wall. It won't sit exactly 18mm off to this edge. So what I've done is I've put the MDF against the wall and then drawn a line where, the imaginary line where it would hit the wall once the wall is finished. And so basically that ends up being 20mm rather than 18mm, because this wall is actually not at a very sharp angle. But if you were doing it like that, for example, it would make it a lot larger, because you'd be cutting this at an angle. So if you imagine cutting that off at an angle, it's going to be a bigger distance of a line that you're basically drawing to the edge there. So I've got 20mm drawn in the positions where the MDF will finish. So it's going to start, the MDF will start on this wall, and then I've also offered up a piece of stud wood to where it's going to finish. So I've drawn a line on the ceiling. I've got my 20mm in from that edge, and then I've got where the stud wall will finish, and I don't need to draw a line on this side here, because the main important one is where it's going to finish to make it flush with this edge here. And then after you've done that, use a straight edge and draw between the two positions that you're going to be putting your first piece of framing wood. So I've used the actual door lining stopper here and drawn between those two positions for where the stud wood will go in. And what that does is it will show you the first angle that you need to cut on the stud wood. I'm going to be cutting an angle here, and on that side, putting that first piece of stud wood in with the angles cut correctly, and then screwing the stud wood to that top one at the correct angle to then build the wall between them. To find out the exact angle, it's a little nifty trick you can use. Get a piece of paper and line it up with the line that you've got here. Push that piece of paper into the wall and then just mark with your finger along that sort of edge there, and it will create you an angle to then cut onto the wood. Basically line it up with the wood, and then you can draw your line and you know what angle you're going to be cutting for the first one. So I'm going to do that now. So then I've used this piece of paper to get the angles that I need on the stud wood on both sides. And I'm going to be cutting those out, but to find out the actual distance that you need between these 2 points here, you basically just need to measure the distance between the line that you've drawn on each side. So the distance between there, and that will show you where to position. You can mark it out onto this and get the distance between these two angles. So there's that first piece in. It's not exact with the angles, but it's close enough and it fits the piece of wood in nicely. So all I've done is I've screwed that piece of wood into a joist or a stud that I know is underneath this wall. I've actually got a service gap, so there's a stud behind here, I know where it is. You can see here, now that I put the MDF up against that, it fits nice and flush up against the angle, this edge that I want to be fitting it to. So that fits there, and the same here, it fits nice and flush up against that edge, and it's following the line that I originally drew. And now I'm just measuring from the stud here to the floor on both sides to then put a straight on each edge. So that is 2, 4, 4, 5. We've got 2, 4, 4, 2 on this side. So a very slight difference. So I've put the outer edges of that stud wall in now. Just to show you a little trick. The easy thing to do is get yourself a set square or a saw On the edge of a saw, just there, usually you have a right angle. So you can push that up against the wood on the ceiling and then push it up to where you're going to put your stud. Then draw a biro mark, and that will give you a nice perpendicular angle to start with. I've done the same on this side. And just screw it in at the top, screw it in at the bottom, screw it at the bottom and top, and then just go along the edge with your piece of MDF or whatever material you're using, maybe plywood, and then just go along the edges, and you can see that it's nice and flush up against that edge, and just offer it up as you go along and put screws in, because sometimes when you've got long pieces of wood like this, they're not always straight, so you can put that piece of wood up against the side here and then either push in this way or pull it that way to make sure that your edge is in the right position once it finishes. So now that's in, I'm now going to cut the door lining to size. The door lining here it has the same size door that I'm going to put in here, so that one is 1988, but I want to make this a slightly larger door lining because I want it to the door to open and close really nice and freely. I did it a little bit there wasn't enough space on that one because there's a slight hump in the floor there, so it drags very, very slightly. So I need to take that door out and slice a bit off the bottom. But I'm just going to add a little bit extra onto this one. So you basically measure from the inside edge there all the way up to the end here. And I've made this 1990. Just going to lock that off and do it on both sides, and then put the door lining in position. And then the first thing I'm going to do is put the top stud support in above the door lining, and then I'm going to build out the sides here so that it all fits around the door lining, and then get it ready for the door to go in. The next thing you want to do is put your door lining in the position that you want it. I'm actually going to put mine over to the left hand side here as far as possible, because then I can reach in and get this light. Then measure the distance between the two studs above your door lining. Mine was 960 wide, and then basically cut yourself a stud. Make sure it matches up with this edge and this edge. Cut it nice and square on each side and screw it in as level as possible. So this is left and right level, and then make sure that it's level this way as well. That's good enough. On this side as well, that's pretty good. You can put this as close as you like to the actual door lining now, because we're framing the wall around the door lining, and this is level, so this is going to be level. One thing you can check here now is the MDF. So if I push that up against the wall, it's nice and flush up against the wall, and it fits nice and flush up against the door lining on both sides. When I put the final MDF bits in, it should fit perfectly on both sides like that, up against the wall. So there you go. On to the next stage. I'm going to be putting a supporting stud in here, and then just putting some supporting studs along the edge here, and then putting the MDF all the way around there, and then we're going to have the hole ready for the door. So you can see now I've put in those supporting studs, and I've also screwed the door liner into the stud. I also added this because that allows the MDF to be screwed to both here and makes it level flat against the back of that liner, so you can make it flush. What I've basically done is just offered that piece of MDF up to the edge there, and it's flush all the way down. And then the same on the other side. It doesn't quite fit in this side, but it's going to be obviously cut to size, so that's all flush all the way down. Basically, the most important thing with a door is to make sure that the side that you're going to be hanging the door is completely level. So this is going to be the side with the hinge, because I'm going to be opening the door this way, because I've got a light switch here. So I want to put my hand in, be able to turn that on and off. If I was to open it this way, it would put light onto the bed. If I was to open it this way, then I wouldn't be able to reach around and get to this light very easily. So I'm opening it this way into the room. So that means the door's going to be hung on this side of the liner rather than this side, because if you opened it this side, it wouldn't fully open. So the hinges are going to be on this side. So the important thing is that on this edge here, the liner is completely level. It's pretty much level on this edge. So I'm not worried about that. That's pretty level. And then go all the way down to the bottom, check it again. Yeah, that's good. And then, as you're doing that, if it's not level, you can use these packers and basically stick them in at different points and basically get it level as you go down. But my stud work was pretty much level, so I just used that. But every single point that you measure and you put a packer in at, you want to put a screw in. Like I mentioned, it's important to get this side accurate in terms of the width and levelness. The liner itself is 766 in width at the top, where it's designed, that's its designed measurement. So it's 766 at the top, so that it will fit a 762 door with 2 millimeters either side. So on this side of the liner, where you're going to be hanging the hinges, you want to make sure that it's not only level all the way up and down on the hinge side, but it's also accurate to the measurement all the way down the wall. And so you just measure at different points. That's a little bit small, 765, but it's still going to fit the door. That's about 765 and a half. And so every point of these measurements, every time you do a measurement, stick some screws in so that it holds it in position. And the top here, the design measurement is 766. Here actually the liner was twisted at the top, so I actually have to put some 3mm packer in, and then it goes completely flat all the way down. So there was a slight, these liners aren't great, you know, they're a nice plain wood, but they twist quite often. So although it comes as a set and it's nice to get everything together, you can't really do much about it, but these liners do twist, so you need to make sure that your stud work that you're screwing onto is as good as possible. Make sure when you choose this wood that it's not skewed. So when you go to the shop or to your timber merchant, just check down there to make sure it's as straight as possible and you're not getting a bit shitty wood. So this one is pretty straight. You can see there's a slight bow here downwards, slight bow downwards there, that's slightly up, and that is pretty much flat. So make sure your stud wood is good, and then if your liner is bent, then when you screw it up against the stud wood, it will straighten itself out. So you can see here I've got it completely flat up against it, and the stud has been put in nice and perpendicular to this side. As I mentioned, you can draw your lines off with that hacksaw and it will make it perpendicular and right angle. All that I need to do now is put the MDF into these sections, butt it up against the edges, then put the architrave on and finish it off with caulk and paint it. But that itself is how to put in an angled stud wall ready for hanging your door. So I'm going to do a separate video on hanging a door, but this is finished now. And I'm pretty pleased with it. It looks good. It's starting to look like a proper hole in the wall. So guys, thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you want to see the door being hung and the MDF being put around and all the caulking and everything being finished and painted, then please do click subscribe down below and you'll be able to see the next video. You'll get a notification. If you've got any questions about what I did today, then please do leave a comment below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But I'll see you in the next video. See you guys soon.